how, what kids do at that age, like what they think of marriage is, from a perspective of a 20-some-year-old that had no idea about what life was, let alone marriage. And then I had another one about a bunch of college kids called Playing the Field. And it was just basically 6 people sitting. It's like Big Chill. Like people sitting down talking around about innuendos about sex and stuff. It's just comedy stuff, and stuff that you would do in college.
Mm-hmm. Channeling your inner Kasdan.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, that and my Kevin Smith, I guess.
Yes, that was us. So Full Sail University. How was that experience?
I actually had a wonderful time going to college. I went to college I got a specialized associate's degree that cost me like a little under $20,000. And we're circa 95, I think, at this point, 94, 95, something like that. And I lived in the Orlando area, but what I really loved about that experience was I just started doing internships at Universal Studios, Disney MGM, which it was called at the time, MGM Studios. And I would work on the back lot, and I just interned. I just worked and worked and worked. I would skip school just to go. I would go on a soundstage where they're shooting a show, and I'm part of the crew. Like, why wouldn't I be doing that? As opposed to going to tapeless studio, for God's sakes, talking about it was ridiculous. So that experience was good. Unfortunately, the 2 things I always tell people I learned at Full Sail at the time. It's a good school, and they do teach you a lot of technical stuff. But at the time, I was caught in that magical time where we were switching from analog to digital. So a lot of the stuff I learned there was pretty much obsolete by the time I got out. So the only 2 things I really learned how to do was how to wrap a cable. So I learned how to wrap a cable really well and how to make a good cup of coffee. And that was extremely important because I'm Cuban, of Cuban descent. So I know how to make a good cup of Cuban coffee. And down in Miami, that was a prerequisite. So I used to get a lot of jobs because of that. Because that's the kid that makes the good coffee. So let's bring him on as a PA. So that was very helpful. But so people understand the hustle I started hustling since I was like 8, but in college, I figured out that I needed to raise money for my short films. So what I did was I would go to the local Ralph's or whatever supermarket there was at the time up there. And I would go to the bakery section and I would go, what do you have that's about to expire or you're going to throw away? And they would give me just mountains of muffins and breads and cakes and all that. And I'd grab it all. And then I would set up shop at midnight because classes ran all 24 hours at Full Sail at the time. So I would set up there with this giant thing of coffee. So I would do like half extra strength Maxwell House and half Cuban coffee. And I would just sell coffee and donuts and whatever else I was given. And I was the dude. I was the dude like everybody. And I pulled in $3, $4, $5 over the course of probably 3 or 4 months doing that while I was there, because that was before they had their like Starbucks inside. It was like it was a different school that wouldn't be allowed today. But at the time I was able to get away with it. And I made, that's the hustle. Like that's something that you're born with that. You could try to learn how to do it, but it's something that I was born with, and it really did help. It has helped me tremendously throughout my career.
All right, your film Broken, was that filmed in Florida or it was?
West Palm Beach. Yeah, it was shot in West Palm Beach.
And was that before or after the Full Sail experience?
Years later. We're talking a decade later.
So what was the brainstorm for Broken?
Well, if you remember, I'm not sure if you read my book or know about my book, Shooting for the Mob, where I almost made a $20 million movie for the Mafia.
I've heard about it, but I have not read it yet.
Yeah, so that whole experience shattered me for a few years. I was so close to my dream. I worked with mobsters, but I also was flown out to LA and met the biggest movie stars in the world, big producers. I'm at the Chateau Marmont, I'm at the Ivy, I'm at all these insane places here in LA. I'm meeting these crazy people. So I'm literally, there's one chapter that's all about Batman. Like I met Batman. So I went to one of the actors who played Batman's house and hung out with Batman. And he's like, I want to be in your movie. I'm like, this is amazing. And then a few weeks later, I'm off. So it's like being so close to your dreams so much, mind you, not the mental abuse and semi-physical abuse that I got from the bipolar gangster. That kind of destroyed me. So it took me a long time to come out of that hole that I had put myself in. I almost went bankrupt. My girlfriend left me. It was a very bad time. It was the darkest time of my life. So when I finally was able to get out of that hole and got a job editing again, and it brought me out of that place, got me out of debt and so on, then I started writing during that first job after that situation. I started writing Broken on my hour-long train trip commute to the job every day, because it was in West Palm Beach and I lived in Broward in Fort Lauderdale area. And I did that every day. So I would just sit there and write on my iMac clamshell. And I would just write this film. And it was just an idea I had. I was like, I'm going to shoot a movie. So then it was always constantly kind of figuring out what situation to set up. So after I was promptly fired after a year and a half because I am unemployable, as I've very often said, I don't play nice when I have a boss. I like working with people a lot, and I like being partners with people, but I just don't. I'm an entrepreneur. I don't like that kind of thing. So I opened up my own business, set up in a studio, all with in the back of my head, like, I'm going to shoot this movie. And then slowly but surely I started building up the pieces. It was a long process, but I started building up the chess pieces in my board to be able to execute this film. And then I started making the movie, and I made the movie for about $8,000 with a partner, a friend of mine. And that movie went on to do a lot of money, selling a DVD that had a 3-hour film school on it. And at the time, no one had done something like that. It was 2005, so there was no YouTube tutorials on how to make film. I was basically it. So there was a thirst for that in the marketplace, and we sold over 5,000 copies. And the movie went on to go to, I think, 100, 200, like 180 to 200 film festivals. Roger Ebert reviewed it. It was a complete success. I'm still talking about it. It's been what, almost 15 years now, and I'm still talking about that short film. People still come up to me and ask me about that movie. People come up and tell me that they bought that movie and how it affected their lives because of all the stuff I did on it. So, I don't know how many short films from 2005 people are still talking about. So it does have some sort of zeitgeist in the indie film space. So, especially for a certain generation. And it kind of launched everything for me. A lot of the things that I do with Indie Film Hustle, with Filmtrepreneur, the Filmtrepreneur method, which we'll talk about later, all these kind of ideas of marketing and niche audiences and kind of creating a product for that audience, all this kind of stuff. I kind of was doing it all on my own, not knowing what it was, and I was kind of setting a lot of groundwork for myself for future success in other avenues in my life. But that film, I can't ask any more of that little film. I mean, that as my friends, like, it launched like careers off of it. Like, my 2 visual effects artists, one of them right now is working on The Last Star Wars and The Mandalorian. He's working on that. Like, literally, Dan, who's been my brother from another mother for so many years, who's done every movie with me. He's worked on something, doing either visual effects or poster work or artwork. He's always been there because I helped him launch his career with Broken, and then further later with my post-production company. He's a very talented guy, but it all came down from that movie. And then my other buddy Sean, he's working at Tippett Studios on big, huge jobs. It launched careers. That little thing is insane. Like, what's happened with that little movie is remarkable. It really was, but it was the right place at the right time with the right product, as I always say.
Did you ever feel like giving up when you were shooting the movie?
No, that never came into. No.
That's good. That's good.
I wasn't. I had shrapnel, but I didn't have enough shrapnel yet to have those fears. Did I have almost a panic attack on set? Yes. I was a 5-day shoot. 2.5 of those days were just the 3-minute action sequence. Wow. We were shooting in a broke down, hospital. It was a large crew. It was, I spent more money on that than I did on This Is Meg, my first feature, or on my second feature, Ego and Desire. So, it wasn't easy, but when you're young like that, I was 30 when I made that, 29, 30. I didn't know enough to know that I didn't know enough. And I kind of figured it out along the way. But I knew that I had the skill set. I knew I'd already been directing. Don't forget, I'd already been directing commercials, music videos, corporate things. I'd been a director already, and I'd been paid to direct and so on. So I had already gone down that road. So I was capable in my skill. But when your mind gets involved, that's the dangerous part. And I mean, I literally had an anxiety attack on the set. I literally had to go to the bathroom, meditate for a minute just to kind of calm me down. But I went out and I just kept doing it. And these were long days. We're talking about the temperature in that place. Oh my! It was a basement, so we're looking at 100, 104 with 100% humidity. It was a week after a hurricane that hit, so there was water damage everywhere. It wasn't an easy shoot. I'll tell you that. It wasn't an easy shoot, but my God, the fruits of that labor are still being. I still make money on a weekly basis off of that movie.
That's great. Wow. When did you decide it's time to move to LA?
In 2008, I started making I started thinking about seriously doing it around 2007 or so, 2006, 2007. I started to thinking about it. And then I had met my girlfriend, who's now my wife at that point, and I kept planting those seeds. I'm like, I'm leaving LA eventually. I'm going. That's the plan. And we would come out and do like scouts of neighborhoods and feel things out and check things out to see what we did. So it was a long process. It wasn't just like I just packed up the car and just drove and figured it out when I got here. I did that to a certain extent, but I did do some preliminary recon. But I just said to myself, I have to go. I have to go to a place. I was dying in Florida. I was literally dying in 2008. This is before the crisis hit. This is before the recession hit. Things were extremely tough. I couldn't get any editing work. I was doing workshops here and there to kind of pay ends meet. I was selling comic books on eBay and just hustling hard on so many different ways, just trying to make a living. And I just told my wife, I was like, you know what? And I was editing, and my post-production company was doing posts and stuff, but it just wasn't the same. And I was just like, I need something else. And if I'm going to make a go at this, I got to go where the action is, and the action's in LA. So we moved out I knew two people here. And one of them is a good friend of mine named Suki, and he actually told me, because the only thing you will regret about moving to LA is that you didn't do it sooner. And he was absolutely right. I got here, I knew two people. I had no job prospects. My wife at the time, she was still my girlfriend, had no job prospects. And we just showed up with savings. I did buy out a Hollywood video that was going out of business. And brought over like 5,000 DVDs so I can sell those on eBay for money just in case stuff didn't really go the way I wanted to. That always hustling, baby, always hustling. And when we got here, my wife got a job within 2 weeks. I landed and had a feature film to edit in color. Then an old client showed up, and I literally was racing to get my system up so I could start working. So I had already landed I had jobs, I had money coming in. I was still selling DVDs on the side for extra income. My wife had a job. And then the recession hit, and we were lucky enough to coast right through it. It didn't affect us that badly at all. So we were very, very lucky and very blessed that happened. But I just showed up, and we got a 2-room apartment. We rented. One room was where we slept. The other room was where I set up my edit suite. And I was editing music videos with Snoop Dogg and Ludacris and these huge, rappers. These big producers would like show up to my house in North Hollywood, or my apartment in North Hollywood, ring the bell and come in. It was just the way business was done. And, it was insane. It was insane. Like, I think about it now and it's like, that's crazy. It's It's crazy talk. Like, you don't just do that. But I had no kids. I had no family. We were too young. You know, she was in her